developed more and more of the character based on what I did in Panama against Noriega. And
so that's what I thought. Jack Ryan is you.
Well, in part. I can't say that, nor will I. I mean, Tom is a very creative individual. He is a very fanciful. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's got a great Irish wit. So I can't say I'm totally Jack Ryan. I'm in part. The stories are based on what I did in hostage negotiation. But, in fact, none of our books, either Tom's or mine, or 26 novels, have ever been in a classified situation. But on top of that, I think it's important for the audience to understand, and I'm glad you corrected me, that every publisher has to vet that book so clearly that even when I made a reference to something 150 years ago, that the Delano family was running opium in one of my books, that's 150 years ago, into China, that was canceled out. So the fact that this book is being published without the consent of the Defense Department is at best ingenuous and at most a lie. General Dempsey is lying. I will boldly say to you, he is lying. Panetta
sure, this is their book they're putting out.
Bannon is lying. But it's more serious than that. And Dutton is lying. What makes this a terrible lie, and Dempsey went out of his way to reprimand ex-CIA and ex-Special Forces men who have been heroes in our cases. And by the way, people have to understand, I worked with a Special Force. Most of them do not say anything. They work 24/7, 365 days a year, and their life is compromised by this book. And that's the terrible part about it. And Dempsey never said a word about it. Brannon never said a word about it. Donlan nor Panetta. They have been cowards. They have been professional, self-aggrandizing individuals at the stake of our serious, valorous veterans who are dying out there. Most Special Forces never tell you what they do. They, by the way, they aid other countries. They're on 24/7 endlessly. Remember General McChrystal? He just commented about the fact that he didn't think the White House was that effective. He was fired the next day. Now, you're telling me that a book that's written by a special guy, supposedly in SEAL Team 6, which should have kept their mouth shut because the head of the Special Forces now is McChrystal, an excellent rear admiral who should have clamped this down immediately, and General Dempsey should have clamped this down.
They're being ordered by the president to do it. So what do they do at that point?
If they are ordered, they're not cowardly. Then we have a politicized military, which is what I'm afraid of, and that's what you're saying. If our military is politicized, it should be fired. Dempsey should be fired. Brannon should be fired. Panetta should be fired. Donlan should be fired. And the National Intelligence Officer, because we cannot have a country.
Sure, but pulling back, what does this signify that they're so
military or intelligence service?
What does this signify, Dr. Pachenik?
It's not safe.
What does this politicize that they're doing all this stuff? I mean, does it signify that they're amateur or just reckless?
It signifies both. What it really signifies, with all due respect to you, and I know you won't believe this, they were afraid of what you and I had said 10, 12 years ago. They can't get over the fact that you brought back, with all due respect, and you're not in danger, with all due respect, you came back with a prediction that I made 10 years ago that the day we leave Iraq, Osama bin Laden will be pulled out as a narrative that is supposed to justify what happened.
Yeah, you said he'll be thawed out off of ice, and then in the election 2 years later, the word was they were going to do it then. But then they had Madeleine Albright, Walter Cronkite, and Teresa Heinz Kerry all went on CNN in 1 week and said, they have him, don't roll it out, Bush. Don't use that card. And the word is he went back basically on the ice. I mean, this is just incredible that they would have the nerve to play this card.
Well, what it does is it insults the intelligence of the American people. We're not dummies. I'm not here to glorify myself, but I'm not here to even say it. I'm here to state very simply, I have been in the business of serving our country. I still offer my services for free. I find this reprehensible, not because it's only a lie. It degrades the service of honorable men and women who are serving our country, are now in the field, both in the intelligence and the military field, whose lives are at stake. Every time you say we killed Osama bin Laden by some hotshot, make-believe SEAL Team 6, some Special Forces guy is going to be taken out because some real terrorist is really going to kill him to make a point that Special Forces are not that special. And at the same
That's
time,
right. It's made the Special Forces the absolute plum target to go after.
Correct. and it's made it even worse. Now, Dutton has no excuse whatsoever for having given a contract that they knew they could not vet out the author. And they said, this is more absurd, they said that the author brought his own lawyer to vet out the issues. Now, that is so absurd. There is no publisher that is stupid enough to allow the lawyer of an author, if there is such an author, to vet it out. So you know,
because that lawyer wouldn't be privy to all the national intelligence information. They couldn't vet it.
That is correct. And also, it's conflict of interest. Dutton needs their own lawyers. Penguin is a very major house. But what it shows you, once again... It shows you that
the White House ghostwriters wrote this because they couldn't get SEALs to write a real story on something that didn't exist. They've already blown up 2 of the helicopters. This is just pure fiction.
Well, no. It's not only fiction. Fiction can be detrimental. This is cowardly and greedy on all parts. On our military side, you're cowardly because we have generals who are afraid they can't continue their promotions or get their pensions, and they can be fired very easily. If I were in charge, I fired generals. I fired CIA operatives when I had 5 administrations, and the president's backed me. But you have a president who really cannot do very much now. And you have a president who has a White House that has been servicing, Brannon was servicing Bush Jr., Clinton, and now Obama. And you have Hillary Clinton, who's put in Panetta, who was Clinton's chief of staff and a congressman from a walnut congressman.
Totally political.
Never really had military experience, who's now in charge of our military and was head of our CIA. Now, you don't have accountability here. What you have are men without integrity, without professional expertise, utilizing a political expediency and narrative to manipulate the fears and concerns of our country while we have bigger issues. For example, we have 28 veterans dying every month here, committing suicide while 1 veteran is being shot in Afghanistan and Iraq, and our military doesn't concern about it. For months I've been writing, fired General Shinseki, another useless general. Least professional general I've ever seen, the head of the VA. He said, no, I increased my staff from 10 to 20,000. He had no idea. Meanwhile, my psychiatrists are out in the field are saying these guys are dying by the caseloads because the treatments aren't correct, the nurses, the management incompetent.
Well, I was about to stop you. I was about to stop you, Doc, because I want to start over here. You are uniquely, because you've worked in intelligence, State Department, you've got multiple medical degrees from Harvard and other universities, and I mean, you were the former head psych warfare guy for the State Department, which we all know is above the CIA. So explain to the viewers, from your expert opinion, why we're seeing record suicides.
This is the first time, let me explain it so they'll understand. I'm a psychiatrist by training, trained at Harvard. I had a PhD in MIT and international relations at the same time, not because I'm that smart, but because Harvard wasn't that great. The reality, I was a board examiner. That means I examined other psychiatrists for 10 years. I flunked 60% of all psychiatrists coming through on a simple question, which was, tell me what you see in front of you in terms of a psychiatrist and the patient, and if you can't give me a differential diagnosis, you're out. And I flunked them. And I was threatened that if I don't pass them, I'll be in violation of EEOC. Well, I left. I said, I'm not bringing any of these psychiatrists. For years, I kept saying to our military men, the Veterans Administration, where my friends are major psychiatrists, are telling me soldiers are dying right and left, committing suicide at a greater rate than we had ever seen. Why? Because this ungodly war, which was not justified, created by Clinton, Bush, and maintained by Obama, we're forcing our soldiers to go through not 1 rotation, which is what we may have done in Vietnam, or what I did, 2 or 3 rotations overseas. We're going through 4 rotations with minimal amount of rest. We're forcing their families to talk to them on the television, on the internet, telling these soldiers who are brave enough to go to 4 rotations, hardly ever seeing the enemy, who have concussions from IEDs, electronic devices, never seeing an enemy, being shot at repeatedly 24/7 to come back and tell us they're okay. And instead, the military has refused to recognize these are not just psychological problems or psychiatric problems. These are what we call brain damage problems or traumatic brain injury. In almost every one of them, if you do an MRI, a resonant imaging of the brain, you will see scar tissue in almost every one of these soldiers. But our Veteran Administration says, no, a lot of them are fake. A lot of them are just malingerers, and our military refuses to respond to them. As one soldier said, listen, you could train me to kill people in 6 months, but you can't get me in to see a doctor in 365 days.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next.
That we have now in America.
Amazing. I want to bring that up right now because some of them are serving 6, 7, 8 tours. I was on a plane with a military police officer who was flying his dead buddy back. So they had the coffin on the plane, and they had the police cars and the mayor, everybody meeting it to take it out to Fort Hood when I flew back into Austin. And I said, how many tours? 5, 6? He goes, no, I'm starting my 8th. And he said, now military police see the worst duty because we're escorting, the vehicles and things that are being bombed in Afghanistan and Iraq. He'd been in Afghanistan, but his best friend had been sent to Iraq and had just died from an improvised explosive device. And so they're just sending him through this over and over and over and over again. But then I wanted to ask you the question. Sergeant Bales was going to his 4th tour. He'd lost his family, had a breakup over this, had been arrested by police, freaking out. His foot had been almost completely blown off. They stuck a prosthesis on him and ordered him back to combat. So I've never heard of an army where your foot, 2/3 of your foot's blown off. And then the psychiatrist put him on serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which the insert says under stress can make you, not have compulsion control and start going crazy, causes suicide and other things. And then he sees his buddy get IED'd and killed that day, and then he goes out and kills 18 people, and burning children and stuff, in some type of hallucinogenic psychotic break. I mean, you're a psychiatrist. Does that sound right when I'm saying they're just common sense? His foot's blown off. He's got a fake foot running around doing this duty in Afghanistan. I mean, this is insane.
I agree. Listen, I don't know the specific cases, but the cases are mounting up with a certain pattern, Alex, and this is what your audience knows and understands well. Each one of the members of your audience has a son, a daughter, or a friend who's been involved in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's a tragedy. Our military, we had a motto in the military, we never leave anyone behind. Our generals have left our soldiers behind. There is no excuse for General Dempsey to reprimand any one of our ex-soldiers and veterans and special forces and CIA, saying that we shouldn't politicize this kind of nonsense that came out, or politicize the fact that we have veterans who are dying at the rate of 26 per each one killed overseas.
Or 28.
We have 6,000 veterans per month who are being deactivated, 4 to 7 rotations, and there's no place to live. They don't have the benefits, and the military has said, we're doing the best we can. They give them a treatment program called virtual imaging, which my ex-medical school, Cornell University Medical College, had the audacity to show that this could be a treatment. Now, you don't have visual images of bombing and get desensitized to it when, in fact, you have brain damage. We're not spending the money. We're not giving the amount of time that we need to treat these soldiers effectively and get them out.
Sure, well, Bales is the guy.
They should never have been in Afghanistan. I asked the President of the United States, why doesn't he send his 2 daughters there? Let him understand what it means instead of keeping them in a private school. Why not send Bush's children in there?
Sure.
Or Cheney's lesbian daughter he's so proud of, to go over there and fight overseas to see what our soldiers have to do and deal with. The issue now is that we have politicians who've lost their legitimacy. They've lost their legitimacy as really caretakers of a republic and a democracy, which we men fought for. I had PTSD in one of my rotations, but it wasn't a military rotation because I worked as a singleton overseas. That means you work alone, you're continuously under stress, you live under stress 24/7. And it was months on end. And when I came back, I had swollen hands, swollen feet. I was totally irritable, and I had to see a doctor. There's nothing shameful about it, but it is a real